Thank you so much. It is so wonderful to be back in person. I feel like the video talks were a challenge for me. I learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and video talks I still need work at. So I want to start by thanking Tico for setting up this conference and starting it. It has been so organic and so wonderful to be brought into it and to be part of the talk. I want to thank Patrick because he created the space this year that we get to share all our passion for discovering things about Macintoshes and how they work and how to work with them and how to get them to work for the people who were responsible for their Macs. I want to thank him also for creating the space where there's this warmth and friendship for not only people who we've known for years, but people we've just met. And I'd also like to thank the team that's behind the scenes, because I always feel when I come here and give a talk that there's a family looking after me, and they're going to make sure that my videos look good, my slides look good, the audio works. It's a huge, allows me to relax. It's really wonderful. So 35 years of products from OWC. 35 years is an awful long time in this industry. You sort of can't think of very many other companies that have been around that long. You can't think of that many companies that have had the same founder or CEO for all 35 years. Larry O'Connor started OWC 35 years ago. Here he is with his son after he'd been running the company for almost 20 years. His son is now in college. But 35 years, it's not only Larry who's been there that long. Our president has been there 27 years. She started 27 years ago. Our head of product development has been there 26 years. Our head of customer service has been there 12 years. And I feel like a relative newcomer. I've been there 8 years. And it's really sort of amazing to have that sort of sense of continuity and ability to work together. But I'd like to describe OWC using sort of a paradigm that I got from this book I read 5 years ago, The Power of Habit. And habit is what we do sort of without thinking about it. For me, my habit in the morning is I come down, I turn on the fancy Italian espresso machine, I pull out the beans, et cetera, et cetera. He talks about habit people have and how to change it. But for this talk, he also talks about the institutional habit, the habit that is part of a company, how a company makes decisions, how they deal with emergencies. And he cites research that was done 20 years before he wrote the book about how the success of a company has so much more to do with the habits than individual decisions that are made. So I think OWC is different because we have different habits than a lot of companies, and I think it also is the reason why so many people stay there a really long time. So the habits all come, Larry's the founder, and he has some really concrete ideas about what he wants to do. He has always believed that we should have a lighter impact on the earth and that we should make products that last a long time, do not become obsolete, and allow people to use computers for longer. So get more lifetime out of your computer. Don't trade it in after 2 years, make it worth 5, 6, 7 years instead. And his point is that it's much more environmentally conscious to not have that computer go to e-waste and get recycled, but to actually use it for a couple more years. And he actually started with the whole renewable energy things years before anyone else did. So he had a wind turbine at the Illinois facility installed in 2009. In 2014, he started putting solar panels on the roof there. In 2015, he put solar panels on the roof of the facility in Austin, Texas. And by the end of 2015, the company was making more electricity than it was using. So if you took the amount of electricity we made in Illinois and Texas, it was more than we're using in all our facilities all over the country. So, and that has been the case since 2015. So long before Apple was talking about it, GM was talking about it, all these other companies were talking about it, we were actually doing it. And we weren't doing it by buying other people's green energy, we were doing it by producing our own. So as an example for how we go about designing products and how our desire to make things last a long time, and be really top-notch. I'm going to go through a list of our products and the design decisions that went into making them. So originally, we were making 2 portable USB enclosures, one of which was plastic. Sort of cool. You could see what type of drive it is. Took any SATA drive. You could drop it, and it was pretty reliable, pretty robust. And the other was sort of industry-standard extruded aluminum with aluminum end caps. If you look at the way a lot of the current USB-C portable drives, a lot of them are plastic, a lot of them are extruded aluminum. And so we decided we're going to do something different, do something that was going to be last longer, be more robust. And we took a leaf out of Apple's book, and we CNC'd the enclosure out of a solid block of aluminum. So here's a little drive. It's just slightly larger than your AirPod case. We decided it had to be waterproof. A couple of us had lost electronic devices, me by capsizing a canoe, and I didn't have a water bag, so it just went into the drink. 15 seconds later, $1,000 worth of electronics toast. So we want it to be waterproof. We want it to be USB-C 10 gigabit so that it could do 1 gigabyte a second transfers. And we wanted it to be in size up to 2 terabytes. And by making it all aluminum, the aluminum enclosure could dissipate any heat we have from the larger sizing enclosures. So just as an example, I thought, well, we should actually try running over one with a car and see whether it still worked, right? If it's supposed to be reliable, let's find out if it really is. And then I thought, well, I've run over it with a car, it still works. Let's see what happens if I drop it into some water. And so I pulled it out, I dried off the USB-C connector, plugged it in. It's actually been my backup drive for the last month. It's on my trip here. So every time I do a change to this talk, it gets backed up to this very same drive. So it really is, robust. It's going to last. You can drop it at the airport and have a taxi run over it. It's probably going to still work just fine. So let's talk a little bit about docks. We've been making Thunderbolt docks ever since it was possible to make Thunderbolt docks. We were the first people to ship a Thunderbolt 4 Docker hub. We will probably be the first people to ship a Thunderbolt 5 Docker hub. We have a whole range of docks. We have the portable ones. We have the ones with 10G Ethernet built in. We have the ones that are just hubs, so they just have Ethernet connectors. And we decided we wanted to make another dock. We wanted to make something different, something that was unique, and something that really solved a problem. And what we realized was people carry around their Thunderbolt docks all the time because they want to, they're going to do a remote edit somewhere. They're going to do remote work somewhere. They carry the dock and then the power supply. And the power supply is larger than the dock, weighs 3 times as much. It's a pain in the butt, right? So you're carrying around not just one thing, but 2, and you've got it kicking around under your desk. And so we decided to design a dock with the power supply inside. And this is a Thunderbolt Go dock. The power supply is over on this end right here. And it's all one piece, so you need this and a cord in your set. And it's not overly large, not overly heavy. We're actually going to raffle 2 of these off on Friday, so come on Friday. I love it. I think it's totally cool. It's all aluminum. It dissipates heat really well. So yeah, it's the dock to get if you want a really great dock that you can carry around all the time. Next up, I'm going to start talking about all our storage products. I write SoftRaid. I'm heavily involved in storage products, so we're going to talk about them quite a bit. And just so that everyone knows I'm not lying about the numbers I'm going to start showing you for performance, I wanted to be clear about how I did all the performance benchmarks. The last 2 performance benchmarks I'm going to show you were not done this way. They were done on a different computer, but everything else is the same. So everything I'm showing you is from a Mac Studio Max, not the Ultra, but the Max, with macOS 14 with AJA system test. And I use the AJA system test because it gives me really reliable numbers. I can always, I know if I set it up with a given set of test parameters, which are the ones I'm listing right here, then I always get the same results. More importantly, I can do a 64 gigabyte test file, and a lot of the RAID enclosure, hardware RAID enclosures have a cache in them that's like 2 or 4 gigabytes. So they'll be super fast for 4 gigabytes, and then they drop down. One in particular that we tested a couple years ago was slightly faster than us for 2.5 gigabytes, and then they dropped down, and they were 1/3 our speed for the remaining 60 gigabytes. The other thing that it gives me is a graph at the bottom that tells me like how consistently the read and write speed is, or if there are major drops. So I'm going to show you those as full disclosure all the way through. All our RAID enclosures that have more than 4 drives all ship with soft RAID. And I know people say, oh, software RAID is like not really reliable or not super fast. I think by the end of the talk, you'll realize that both of those things are incorrect. The really cool thing about software RAID is there's no RAID chip. So there's no RAID chip to break, and there's no RAID chip that can become obsolete. So by having software RAID, you can have your drives in a Thunderbolt 1 enclosure, and then Thunderbolt, you get a computer now that has Thunderbolt 3, or say you're going from 2 to 3, or soon to be 3 to 5, then you can just pull your drives out, plug them in the new enclosure, and boom, you've got a faster faster RAID device. And the other thing is that the RAID calculations are being done by the host CPU, so if you get a faster CPU, your RAID speed goes up. This is especially true of RAID 5 write speed, because RAID 5 write is all done with a calculation being done on the CPU with soft RAID. The other thing we get is the drives are not behind a RAID controller chip, so we can actually talk to the drives directly and figure out if they're reliable or if there's problems that are reported by SMART. Can we predict the drive's going to fail, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to expand on that more in the coming years. But so far, we've had it in there since 2010. It has been dramatic what we've discovered and how many times we've prevented people from using drives that are on their way out. Our first Thunderbolt enclosure was the Thunderbay 4. We had a Thunderbolt 1 version, Thunderbolt 2 version. Now we're shipping a Thunderbolt 3 version. It's SATA HDDs or SSDs. Currently, it's only limited by the size of the disk drive, so we're shipping up to 20 terabyte disk drives. So we ship up to an 80 terabyte enclosure. These are the speed numbers we're getting. RAID 0 used to be around 700 megabytes a second. Now we're getting over a gigabyte a second. RAID 5 used to be around 550. Now we're getting 750. What's changed? Faster disk drives and faster computers. So it used to be on Intel, there was quite a difference between write speed on RAID 5 and read speed on RAID 5. And now with Apple Silicon, they're now the same. And this is really dramatic. When I first got my first Apple Silicon machine to test with, I think it was one of the first Mac Minis, I was amazed. Here was this little $700 computer that was just screaming on the RAID performance. So we did the Thunderbay 4, then of course we wanted to do an 8-drive enclosure, and we designed this one. Larry really pushed us. He said, we want an enclosure that will do everything. So we came up with a Thunderbay Flex 8, and it is like a dock and an enclosure all in one. It's also got a PCI expansion slot in it, and it will take the top 4 bays will take either SATA or a standard called U.2. U.2 is, you can think of it as an NVMe blade with an aluminum enclosure around it. So it looks and feels just like a SATA 2.5 or 3.5 inch drive, but it's got a slightly different connector, and it's basically talks PCIe through that connector. So it doesn't have the vulnerability of a little tiny card like a NVMe blade, but it's got the speed of it. And speed numbers we get with this are just under 2 gigs a second. This is with HDDs, so you get faster performance if you were using SSDs. But with HDDs, we get just under 2 gigabytes a second for an 8-drive RAID 0. And for RAID 5, we're over 1.5 gigabytes a second. And again, the write speed is really close to the read speed. And you'll notice there's very few dropouts in the RAID 5 write. So let's talk about NVMe, because I think NVMe is a really cool technology. It's not going to be the greatest thing for long-term storage or sort of a backup archival thing, but it's great if you need absolutely the best performance. And when NVMe blades first came out, we decided to make a product called the Thunderblade, which is 4 NVMe blades raised together with soft RAID. And we were really excited about it. I was working with the hardware engineers when they were designing it. They went through literally 5 prototypes, and they were having heat problems. They put a little fan in there, showed it to Larry, and Larry said, absolutely no fan, because we want customers to be able to use this on a set. And a DIT on a set has to be able to have the camera cards, plug them in, have everything ingest into a really fast device. So, but the producer is going to, sorry, video's off. Thank you. So the director is going to scream if they can hear a fan. So absolutely no. So Larry really pushed us, or pushed the hardware engineers, to make this a fanless design. And part of the magic of the fanless design is we made something that was CNC'd, so it looks like a heatsink. It actually is a heatsink. And underneath, there's a little thin piece of flexible material called a thermal pad that looks sort of like the sticky stuff you use for sticking posters on your wall, but actually conducts heat really well. So the cool thing is that if you hook 4 of these up, when I first demoed this at NAB, I would plug 2 of them into each side of my Intel MacBook Pro, and then I would get 4 gigabytes a second. With the Mac Studio, I can hook 4 of them up, make a 16-drive RAID 0 with soft RAID, because soft RAID allows you to combine drives from all different places and get 10 gigabytes a second. So this is the performance numbers we're seeing with a Thunderblade. It's much better than what we originally saw. RAID 0 on the Intel machines used to be 2,200 megabytes a second, and now it's 28. And when I first started talking to people who had these, Sony has over 100 of them, they said, oh, we actually are using them in RAID 5, not RAID 0. So we went back to the drawing board and we said we should do a follow-on product that's more optimized for people, the way people are using it, which is with RAID 0. With RAID 5. So we did the Thunderblade version 2, which uses 8 blades. So with RAID 5, you're going to lose 1 storage device. So with a 4-drive device, you're going to lose 1/4 your space. With an 8-drive device, you use only 1/8 of your space. And as a side benefit of this, we got much higher RAID 5 performance. So if you look at the original Thunderblade RAID 5 performance and the Thunderblade version 2 RAID 5 performance, we have a 20% bump in speed with those. Next up, Apple shipped the 2019 Mac Pro, and we said, okay, let's take our Thunderblade technology and put it into a PCIe card. So we came up with this card here, which is, again, 4 NVMe blades. It gives us, thank you. It gives us 6 gigabytes a second reading and writing on RAID 0. It actually only gave us about 2 gigabytes a second writing on RAID 5 in the 2019 Mac Pro, and as you can see, we get almost double that going to the Apple Silicon in the 2023 Mac Pro. This is one of the benchmarks that was done on the 2023 Mac Pro. Then we decided, okay, well, if we've got a 4-blade solution, we might as well do an 8-blade solution, and the hardware engineer came up with this design that used a really expensive PCIe Gen 4 switch. And I thought he was crazy. We're wasting all this money in this thing. Apple doesn't ship. They're not going to ship a PCIe Gen 4 solution for years. And Larry said, no, we want to make something that people, when they get it, they can put it into the new machine when Apple finally ships it, and they're going to get an instant speed bump. And that's exactly what happened. We shipped this on a 2019 Mac Pro. We were seeing 12 gigabytes a second. When we go to a 2023 Mac Pro, we're seeing over 22 gigabytes a second. This is the exact card when Apple says on their page for the 2023 Mac Pro, they say up to 26 gigabytes a second storage. They're actually using our card. They're using soft RAID. So anyone who says software RAID is slow, I point them to this. Okay, even RAID 5 performance is pretty screaming. Writing at 7 gigabytes a second. We're probably going to have a slight bump in that in the future. Again, it'll be an upgrade that everyone gets without buying new hardware. I think it's really cool. This product is really cool. We've run it for literally days at a time, flat out. I set up in the lab. I come back 4 days later. It's still doing 23 gigabytes a second. Jellyfish. I went to the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit in 2019, and I listened to all the talks, and about every second talk, someone was up there going, and I did this great project, and I couldn't have done it without my Jellyfish, or my Jellyfish was really cool, and I'm like, what the hell is Jellyfish? So I went out into the exhibitor area, and there's a little booth with some servers called Jellyfish, and I started talking to them, and it turns out there are a whole bunch of video editors who are really tired of dealing with all the Linuxy stuff and the command line stuff and the switches and all this other crap they had to do whenever they wanted to set up a server where they could share media and share editing. So they hired some engineers and actually created a product suite that was designed specifically for video editing that was super easy to use. And so I went back and I told Larry, I said, hey, we've been wanting to get into this market forever, and we've been doing a really crappy job of it, and we should go and look at what Jellyfish is doing and see if we can copy some of it. And Larry actually did something much better. He just bought the company. So we've been shipping Jellyfish, I think, for 3 years now. And we also have the engineering resources and the marketing muscle to grow the product. And that's exactly what we've done. So I think there are like 6 or 7 different Jellyfish models. I'm going to talk about the 3 that I get most excited about, because I only like to talk about things I get excited about. And Jellyfish is one of them. So Jellyfish R24 is a 24-drive solution. It's ZFS. It has all the advantages of ZFS. It has the super easy-to-use interface that the Jellyfish is famous for. It has a VPN connection if you're not on site. It comes with your choice of how you want to network connect it, but sort of the default way is 16 10G Ethernet ports on the back. And that means you can just plug 16 users in just automatically and not have to even think of a switch or configure, just run the cables, have everyone start using it. And it's a super easy way to get up and running. So the only thing you have to do is spend like 2 minutes on each workstation, running the installer, you plug it in, boom, you're there, you're sharing storage, you can start work on your project. So it also is expandable, so you can add up to 4 expansion chassis. So an R24 can have a total of 2 petabytes of storage online. It's sort of wild when you think what 2 petabytes is. And if you wanted to hook it to switch, you can get a 100G Ethernet connector as well. The next one we're talking about, if that's not quite enough for you, we have an all-flash-based solution, the Jellyfish XT. It's one of the few servers that will actually completely saturate a 100G Ethernet port. So it's used for like if you're doing uncompressed 8K and you want to edit, or you want something that's going to be shared among a larger group of people. We decided that, we talked to our customers, they're saying, hey, we're going on site a lot. We need something, a Jellyfish-like thing that we can take on a trip and set up an edit studio in like a rented conference room or a large hotel suite or something. So we came up with the Jellyfish Nomad. You wouldn't want to check one of these things, of course, because it's so valuable. It has all your footage on it. It's really key to your production that you're going to do, say, a live shoot or something. So it's designed to go in the carry-on section of the airplane, and it comes with a case, so you can just slide it in. It fits in there. It's got 6 10G Ethernet ports, so you can hook up 6 people simultaneously. It's screaming fast. It's relatively quiet. It's really easy to. It uses NVMe blades, but it's super easy to change the blades. Jellyfish started off at VGTV. VGTV is the largest online presence, show creator for Norway. And they started off with 1 Jellyfish Mini and have since grown to having 13 Jellyfish R24s and Minis, 2 XTs, over 2 petabytes of storage, backup that we supplied, and archiving that we supplied as well. This is a brief list of the shows that have been produced and movies that have been produced on Jellyfish. So it's like I looked at this list when I got it last week, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen that, and I've seen that, and I've seen that. And it's pretty phenomenal. So in closing, Jellyfish is really designed for that market. I think we have a home run on that. A couple years ago when I was here, people were complaining, actually in 2018, 4 years ago, people were complaining, hey, you don't have a presence in Europe. It's really hard for me to order and get stuff from the States. It's hard for me to send stuff back. You don't have distributors. So we solved that by setting up an OWC Europe, which is in Brussels. The person who runs it is Sebastian, who's here. I love him. He is so competent, and he's just like there's no problem I can't solve type person. If you buy something, it'll get shipped from there, from inside EU. If you have a problem, it's going to go back to there. If you need customer support, you're going to get it from there. So we have a really strong EU presence. We ship directly from the factory to there. Go and talk to Sebastian. You're going to love him as much as I do. So thank you so much. So there's one more thing I wanted to say, which is one of the things I love about OWC is there's a habit of helping everyone. So when I was setting up to do this talk, I kept needing video or needing things, and I'd mentioned, oh, I really like a shot like this, and the photographer would find it for me, or edit a video for me, or make a suggestion, or somebody did a benchmark at 7 o'clock on Friday afternoon just because I said, well, if you got this next week. He said, no, I'll stay and do it for you. So that feeling of helpfulness and teamwork is just everywhere at OWC. It makes it fun to work there, and makes me really happy to be part of that team. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you, Tim.